Hello, fellow Plexers. This video is going out to Rob from the Plex Pal Facebook group. His actual question was about syncing watch history status between two different Plex servers. And the background story is he had a power loss event a while ago that caused database issues. So he has a second server spun up on a second Unraid server, and he connected all his users to it. But unfortunately, without preparations from a user perspective, that's not going to work because they're on a brand new server. For them to know if they've already watched a movie or an episode, they would have to have already gone to their own personal account settings and enabled syncing the watch history between multiple servers like I have. Update this setting. So I can stop syncing, which I'm not going to do. So they would have to do that. So Rob, this could be a little video you could make. You could do it in 30 seconds and make it a pre-roll in case this issue comes up again in the future. But I'd like to help you prevent this issue from coming up. But while we're in the settings, you should go to scheduled tasks and make sure everything's checked, with maybe the exception of update all libraries during maintenance. This backs up your database every 3 days. But the whole goal of what we're going to talk about is to never have to restore a database through Plex. I don't know how to do it. I've never had to do it. But here's the backup location. And you can see it's going right to the normal Plex server folder structure. So this is I don't even know what server. This is my Unraid server, so it's going into the library application support Plex media server folder plugin support database. So I can find that. This is my regular Unraid server. If I go into main and I go into the cache pool, app data, go into Plex library, application, Plex media server, and I've lost the next folder. Plugin support databases. Let's see if we can find that. Plugin support databases. So this is where it goes. And you could actually save that someplace else, I guess, but I just have that as the ultimate ability to restore. All right, so back to Plex server. This is what should be enabled. Let all this stuff do its normal jazz. And if none of this has been set, before you set any of it, you definitely want to go to troubleshooting and optimize your database and clean bundles. And then the scheduled tasks will keep all that up. That makes for a very healthy Plex server, whether it's running on redundant media or not. So a regular Plex server without redundant media, without redundant Docker containers, as long as it's on a UPS, it's going to last a long time because power surges will damage hardware and uncontrolled shutdowns will damage your data or could damage your data. So again, I don't care if this thing lasts 3 years. For 70 bucks, it's a cheap investment. Now, I own 2 different units. This is the one I bought for my primary Synology NAS, where all my Plex media is. It's got a replaceable battery, so I just have to change that. And I don't really care if a new one costs $220 and the battery costs $140. This is already set up. It's not hard to set up, but it's already set up. I'll just replace the battery. This powers my older Synology NAS, which is on backup duty. Eventually, when one of my 2 adult sons who live in town get gig fiber access, like my youngest son who lives 900 miles away, I don't really want my backup server down with him. It's too far away. But one of my 2 local sons gets the same fast internet. My older NAS and its expansion unit and this will go live at their house and be a true off-site backup. All right, so let's talk about what can be done in Unraid. All right, so I've got two Unraid servers. My main one where Plex is running, and a backup one for demonstration purposes. So, Rob, if you're not already set up, and I doubt that you're not, you want your Docker containers running on a redundant cache pool. Now, it doesn't have to be that big. This is just what I'm running. I've got all the trash guide containers on my Synology NAS, and they have to be there because that's where my media is. So I would suggest not only a pair of brand name SSDs, but I might suggest only using Western Digital Red SSDs. And Unraid's beautiful. This is a little NUC, and all I can have is one NVMe drive and one SATA SSD drive. They're both Western Digital Red drives. Just don't screw around with that. They're a little bit more expensive. Maybe if you weren't going to run Western Digital Reds, maybe only Samsung Evo drives. Don't use a desktop hard drive or a desktop SSD for this purpose. Use something good. Western Digital Red or Samsung. So I don't have any Unraid storage, and you do. My storage points back to my Synology NAS via the unassigned devices plugin. So I can go to my test Unraid server. Now, I would assume that you've got a parity drive besides just a data drive or two. And if you don't, you need at least one parity drive. Two's even better. So I just assume you already have that in place. The next thing I want to talk about is the importance of folder structure. You have two Unraid servers. The second one should not be a duplicate of the first one. It should be a backup device. So let me go into this folder structure. Is that where I want to be? No, I want to be in this folder. Nope, I was right. I want to be in this folder structure. So you should only have one shared media folder. And most Docker setup guides have people creating separate shared media folders, maybe for incoming data, maybe for like SOB-NZBD files or qubit torrent files, and then maybe a movie shared folder and a TV shared folder and a music shared folder. Well, the trash guides come right out and say that most Docker guides are wrong because they don't configure for atomic moves. And that's one shared media folder. I happen to like the idea of separate library sort folders. So if I go into the TV library folder, you see the actual folder structure for 3 different Plex server TV show libraries. A main one, a kids one, and an anime. This enables Sonar, one instance, to pull shows and put them into whichever library folder structure you want. So if you're using Sonar for anime, those shows get assigned to this folder. Regular shows get assigned here, and maybe this is a TV-cartoon, and you can put Saturday morning cartoons into that folder. And one instance of one instance of Sonar handles that. But for that to happen, the acquisition folder, SOB-NZBD for a Usenet setup, has to be in that same shared media folder to enable atomic moves. An atomic move is instantaneous, so the files deposited in the SOB-NZBD complete folder. Now, this is just mock structure. There's no trash guide setup on this test NAS. But so that raw incoming file will get picked up by one of the R programs. Say it's a TV show episode. Sonar is monitoring this folder structure. And when it sees an episode, it will, all in one fell swoop, like Superman, move it and rename it to the correct TV library folder structure. And it will deposit it into the right season folder. It all happens instantaneous. You can test this on a desktop computer if it has 2 hard drives. You can take a big 4 gig or 4K file, say 30 to 80 gigabytes, and you can cut and paste it from one directory to another, and it happens as quickly, if not quicker, than snapping your fingers. Now cut and paste it onto a different drive. Suddenly you can go make a cup of coffee. Suddenly you can go check the mail, vacuum out the front seat of your car, and come back and it's not finished yet, right? That's the example of how the trash guides work when you don't achieve atomic moves. And this comes into play when we want to back up media too. One shared media folder is a lot easier to back up. Let's go here. One shared media folder is a lot easier to back up than multiple ones. You capture everything in it. So with you, I would also run the app data plugin, and I'm going to show that on my main server. So I'm going to show it on my main Unraid server. I back up to my Synology NAS because that's where my Plex media is. You would back up to your one shared folder on your Unraid storage. So let's go find that app. Installed apps, app data backup. Now this backs up, actually I can use two windows here. This plugin will back up the container structure. So I'll use this example over here. Let's go back to, I could just click main. Let's go back to the cache drive here. So under app data, on this test server, I only have the Plex container running. Well, this plugin will stop this container, then back all of the data structure up to a location of your choosing, and when it's done, it will restart the container. So on my production system, I have it set up for Wednesdays at 3 a.m. and it stops all of these containers, backs them up to a folder on my Synology NAS, and then it restarts all the containers, and it also backs up the configuration of my Unraid flash drive that Unraid boots off from. Included in that is all the container configuration. So if I pop into Plex and edit it, all of this custom information you've set for your server, this gets backed up too. So I could literally nuke one of these containers and not destroy the actual structure for them, but I could maybe do a configuration wrong and I could lose the container. If I go to add it back, Unraid automatically fills in all my fields when I recreate that container. And of course, that recreated container connects back to the physical structure of the actual container application files. Unraid is just like perfect. I am a Synology NAS lover, but Unraid, the way it handles Docker containers, the way this app data plugin works, it's a thing of beauty. So you're backing up app data, and my suggestion is to, let's see what server I'm on, deposit those backups into your storage, which on this one, well, I went the wrong area. On this one will be right in the one shared media folder. So if your container screws up, you can restore everything from your production Unraid server. If the whole Unraid server blows up, you should be using the old server as a backup repository, running Unraid to just back up everything. And basically, I'm not sure how normal backups are handled in Unraid because I handle that in Synology. All you need to do is make sure you're backing up your media PD folder, because that will have the app data backup backups also. That is all you need to restore not only your main Unraid flash drive to boot off from, but it has all your container data. So when you bring your structure back even to a, you can throw this server in the trash and build new hardware and restore everything from the old one. Everything will be just as you left it. Um, so I think this is a more functional way to have protection rather than to have two servers that can each do the same thing. Because then, if you add new media to this server, are you manually adding it to the old server too? None of that makes sense, and none of it seems to be efficient to me. Backups are the way to go, and Unraid's got a lot going for it. And I need to research that now because all my data is on my Synology NAS. I can bring that in. I've got a lot of data here. That'll take a second to load. But if I go into File Station, now I have a test server running on this too because my main server is on the Unraid system. I've kind of lazily named my shared media folder Plex. And my sort folders aren't as explicitly named as my test servers. So my sort folder for TV show libraries is simply TV. And then my main TV show library is simply TV again. So the structure is Plex TV TV. And then you notice everything's lowercase with no spaces, and you return to uppercases and spaces when you get to the actual media level here. So this is just hanging out here for some reason. I don't know why it's there now. The kids' TV show library, it's right there. And say I wanted a anime TV show library separate. Well, my one instance of radar, because radar is actually pointing, well, the path that points to 3 different locations. The container for sonar paths to my shared Docker folder, to the sonar folder for configuration files, and then there's 2 paths. One path points to this level, which is the TV show sort library folder, and one points to the sob nzbd complete folder. And that way, when I add something to sonar, I can direct it to anything in that shared or that TV show library sort folder. If I wanted to add an Unraid folder, if I wanted to add a DVR folder, if I wanted to add, well, there's not too many TV show libraries you could add. I think really kids, main, and anime. But say I wanted a 4th one for some reason, I could direct series to that 4th folder structure. What you can't do with either sonar or radar is add the same movie or the same episode or TV show to multiple libraries. Like I don't use radar, but I'm still set up for this nested folder structure. These are different movie libraries. So radar could supply all of them, but it can't supply the same movie to the regular library and the 4K library. You would need a second instance of radar to do that. So this one shared media folder structure is very important for a trash guide setup to achieve atomic moves. And I know I've talked about this twice now, but again, this is what I do. Secure your main Plex server so it doesn't have any issues. And that's really handled with a UPS frontline device. If you're not using one shared media folder, it's worth revamping everything to get there. I mean, all you have to do is duplicate the structure to get there. And then from within Plex, let me go to a different server. Then within Plex, you don't have to lose any custom metadata. If I had copied all my movies from an unhealthy structure to a new structure, well, I'm not losing anything as long as the main path is there and I've disabled auto emptying the trash and I've disabled automatic or timed library scannings. I simply point to the new path, which should have the same structure. So if your old path had its own separate shared media folder, and now it's been that same structure has simply been moved within one shared media folder or shared folder on your NAS. You haven't rearranged its contents, it's just in a different location. So you just add a new path, and as soon as you add that new path, it'll scan and keep all your custom metadata. Now, if you had movies spread across different areas, that might be a little bit more complicated, but just moving from one shared folder to within another, that's easy to do. You don't lose any custom metadata. So there's a little work there, but you don't lose anything if you do that work correctly. So I'm kind of getting off the topic now, but yeah, don't duplicate Plex servers. Back up the main server after it's hardened, after it's protected, after it's bulletproof, and then back it up to the second server and think of a way to get that second server off site. That's my main concern. I've invested a lot of time and money into my Plex setup. I've got 20 Iron Wolf or Iron Wolf Pro drives in my Synology units. Money is one thing. Insurance will pay for that if my house burned to the ground and I wasn't here. As soon as I can get my second NAS off site, I'm bulletproof. I'm not quite bulletproof now. And Rob, you won't be bulletproof until your second Unraid server, which should only be a backup, is off site too. So this is getting kind of long, but just my opinion on the subject. And to go back to square one, OBS is a great little utility. Do a little screen recording and show your users how to set this so that their watch history is linked across multiple servers in case you just want to do what you're doing now, to give them access to a backup server. You don't have to do things my way, and it's not really my way. My way is using Unraid as a Docker host with media on a Synology NAS, but a backup strategy and all that stuff, a UPS, I just think it's a good idea. And I think that's your original sin, not having a UPS to have avoided the database corruption in the first place. You would have saved yourself a lot of trouble, and I'm sure you would have paid $69 for a budget UPS if you knew ahead of time how much trouble it would save you. So, thanks for watching. Anybody else watching, appreciate it too. Just a little general advice for a really good foundation for even an advanced Plex server and a trash guide setup. Take care.